We shared everything: dreams, vacations, secrets, even inside jokes no one else understood. My best friend and I had been inseparable since childhood. She was family. So when my husband and I hit a rough patch and she offered support, I never questioned it. I leaned on her, trusted her, loved her like a sister. But what I didn't see was how close she and my husband had already become, behind my back, inside my home, and inside my marriage. This story isn't just about infidelity. It's about the kind of betrayal that doesn't knock on the door, it's already inside. It's about rebuilding yourself after discovering the people you love most are the ones who broke you. Part 1. The woman who knew me best. I was always the loyal one, the dependable friend, the wife who sent thinking of you texts in the middle of his workday, the friend who remembered birthdays without Facebook reminders. I was the planner, the keeper, the one who held everything together, or so I thought. Her name was Alyssa. We'd been best friends since we were 10. She knew everything about me, my childhood fears, my teenage heartbreaks, the exact way I took my coffee. She'd helped me pick out my wedding dress. She was my maid of honor. We even joked that she was my other spouse, the one I didn't sleep with but couldn't live without. When she called me crying late one night, saying her relationship had fallen apart and she had nowhere to go, I didn't hesitate. I told her to pack her bags and come stay with us. My husband, Derek, agreed without question. That's the kind of people we were. We opened our doors. We gave without keeping score. At first, it felt like a sleepover from our 20s. Late night talks over wine, movie marathons in our pajamas. Derek even joked that it was like having two wives, and Alyssa laughed in that flirty way she did sometimes, tossing her hair over her shoulder like it meant nothing. I laughed too. I always laughed off things that made me uncomfortable. I never wanted to be that woman, the jealous type, the paranoid one. I trusted them both. But things started to shift. I'd come home from work to find the two of them in the kitchen, laughing a little too hard. They'd go grocery shopping together when I was too tired to go. One afternoon, I walked in on her sitting cross-legged on our bed, helping him fix something on his phone, something about syncing accounts. "She's better with tech than I am," he said casually, and I smiled even though my stomach felt tight. Little things piled up. The way she began wearing my clothes, the way he stopped reaching for my hand in the middle of the night, the way they shared glances that felt too familiar. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overthinking. Then one morning, I found Alyssa's coffee mug in Derek's car. It was a small thing, a pink ceramic cup she'd owned for years, chipped on the handle. She was late for work, he said, so he gave her a ride. Normal, innocent. But why hadn't she told me? That night, I stayed up after they went to bed. I sat in the kitchen, staring at nothing, trying to silence the voice in my head that kept screaming, "You're losing them both." And I did. Slowly, quietly. I lost Alyssa first, emotionally. She began pulling away. Her laughter faded when we were alone. She was always busy, always out when I needed her most. And I lost Derek next. He became a ghost of himself, physically present, emotionally gone. I couldn't prove anything. There were no texts, no lipstick on collars, no overheard moans in the night, just a creeping emptiness I couldn't name. Until one morning, I opened my laptop to order groceries and saw his email open on the screen. An email from her. Not to me. To him. The subject line was innocent enough, "Can't stop thinking about last night." The body of the email was not. My heart didn't break, it detonated. Right there. In the kitchen where we used to dance barefoot and laugh about burnt toast. The world ended in a single click. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I closed the laptop, went upstairs, and got ready for work like it was any other day. Because when betrayal lives under your roof, you learn how to smile through apocalypse. Part 2. The quiet before the storm. I went through that entire day like I was made of glass. Every step I took felt like it echoed too loud. Every smile I gave felt borrowed from another woman's face, someone who didn't just discover that her best friend and her husband had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't even mention it to Alyssa. There's something surreal about betrayal that makes your body go still while your mind screams. I watched them like I'd never seen them before, the way he handed her a glass of wine. The way she laughed a little too long at something he said. It was all so normal. Too normal. That was what gutted me the most. How long had they been doing this? Weeks? Months? Had they laughed behind my back? Made plans for when I wasn't around? That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Derek snored softly beside me, oblivious to the storm that was starting to rise inside me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But all I did was replay that email over and over in my head, dissecting every word, every punctuation mark. Can't stop thinking about last night. And further down, you make me feel seen. I had given Alyssa everything, my trust, my loyalty, my home, and she'd taken more than just my guest room. She'd taken my husband's love, piece by piece, while I stood there thinking I was doing everything right. The next morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until Derek left for work. Alyssa was still in the shower. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop again. The email was still there. I scrolled down. There were dozens of them, threads of messages that told a story I hadn't been allowed to read. Messages about late-night talks while I was asleep. Jokes about how predictable I was. Alyssa even mentioned the way I never noticed anything. She was wrong. I noticed everything now. When she came downstairs, towel wrapped around her head like a crown, she barely looked at me. She moved around the kitchen like it was hers, made herself coffee in the mug I had bought her last Christmas. I waited until she took the first sip before I said it. I know. Her hand froze midair. She didn't ask what I meant. She knew. Of course she did. You know what? She asked quietly. The emails, all of it. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she put the mug down and leaned against the counter like she needed the support. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice too calm, too prepared. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because that's what they always say in the movies. I didn't mean for it to happen, as if feelings are some kind of force of nature, like a hurricane you can't help but walk into. How long? I asked. She didn't answer at first. A few months, she said finally. It started with talking, just talking. I nodded slowly, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. And then what? You accidentally fell into our bed? Her face twisted with guilt, or maybe shame. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't even know who she was. This woman who had been closer to me than a sister, and still chose him. You were always so perfect, she said suddenly, and I blinked in disbelief. Everything came so easily to you, the job, the house, the marriage. I was falling apart, and you were just untouched by it. My heart thudded, slow and heavy. So you slept with my husband to even the score? She looked at me, eyes glassy. No, I fell in love with him. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't heat of the moment. This wasn't drunken misjudgment. This was a decision. Many decisions, over and over again, made in silence and shadow while I carried the weight of our lives like a fool. I want you out, I said flatly, today. But, no, I stood up. You can go to him, or go to hell, I don't care, but you're not staying under my roof another second. She didn't argue again. Maybe she knew she'd already taken enough from me. Maybe she didn't want to see what would happen if she pushed. She packed her things quietly while I sat on the living room couch, staring at the photo on the wall, the three of us smiling on my birthday last year. Cake and candles, arms around each other. That photo felt like a cruel joke now. When Derek came home that night, she was gone. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask him anything. I just walked into the bedroom, shut the door behind me, and locked it. He knocked once, twice, then again. Can we talk? He asked, voice tentative, afraid. Now you want to talk? I stared at the door, hand on my stomach. I felt like I was holding my own ribs in place, afraid I might collapse. This was just the beginning. Part 3, the confrontation. The knock at the door didn't stop. It kept coming, steady and patient, like he thought if he waited long enough, I'd open up, physically and emotionally. But I didn't. I couldn't. I lay on our bed, the same bed they had desecrated, and stared at the ceiling with the kind of blankness that only grief can bring. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was mourning. Mourning a marriage that was still breathing on paper but already dead in my soul. Eventually, I heard his footsteps retreat, the quiet click of the fridge, the muted sound of the TV. He was pretending this was a normal evening, pretending we were still us. The next morning, he was waiting in the kitchen when I came out. Coffee in hand, no tie, no laptop bag. He had cleared his schedule, as if that would be enough to fix what he broke. I didn't sit. I didn't speak. He tried first. "Where is she?" he asked, voice low. "Gone," I said, without looking at him. He nodded slowly, lips pressed together. I figured. I waited, let him stew in the silence. Then finally, "So how long?" I asked. "How long have you been cheating on your pregnant wife with my best friend?" He flinched. 5 months, he said, staring into his coffee. "It started when you were 5 months along." I winced. That was when I had been put on bed rest for 2 weeks. He'd brought Alyssa dinner almost every night. I thought it was sweet of her, kind. I thought she was helping take care of me. She was taking care of him. He continued. "At first, it was just emotional. We were talking more. You were tired, distant. She was here. She understood." "Don't," I snapped, finally looking at him. "Do not blame this on me being pregnant." He looked up, startled. "You think I was distant? I was growing a human being. I was exhausted. I was anxious. I was doing everything I could to make our life better, safer, and while I was literally building our future, you were screwing the woman who held my hand through our wedding vows." "I know," he said quickly. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you." "Hurt?" I laughed. "Bitter. Hurt is when you forget an anniversary. This is something else entirely. You didn't just lie to me, Derek. You dismantled everything we built. You poisoned my memories. You violated our home, our bed. You betrayed the one person who trusted you with everything." He set the coffee down, hands shaking. "I didn't mean to." "No, stop saying that." My voice cracked. "You didn't trip and fall into her bed. You made a choice, over and over. You looked me in the eye every single day and chose to keep lying." He didn't respond. "I need to know," I said, and this time, my voice dropped to a whisper. "Did you love her?" He hesitated too long. That was all the answer I needed. "Wow," I whispered. "You did." He swallowed hard. "It was different, not better, just different. She was someone I could talk to. I don't know how it happened. It just..." "Stop." I shook my head. "You don't get to fall back on it just happened. You had a wife. You had a daughter on the way. You had me. And you threw it all away for a thrill." He stepped forward. It wasn't just a thrill. I felt invisible, like I was fading into the background of our life. With Alyssa, I felt seen. I stared at him, stunned. "You felt invisible? So you destroyed everything?" He didn't respond, and I suddenly realized he wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. "You need to leave," I said finally. His eyes widened. "What?" "No. We need to talk about this. We need therapy. We need..." "No. You need to leave. Today. Pack a bag and go stay with someone who doesn't want to spit in your face right now." "I live here," he said stubbornly, like a child clinging to his toys. "And this is my body, Derek. My child. You didn't think of that when you brought Alyssa into our bed, so don't ask for compassion now." He looked at me, truly looked at me, and maybe, for the first time, saw that I wasn't the woman he thought he could manipulate anymore. "Where do we go from here?" he asked softly. I almost laughed again. "We don't go anywhere. You go. I stay. I raise our daughter in a home that doesn't stink of lies and perfume that's not mine." He tried again to plead, to reason, but I walked away. I closed the nursery door behind me and slid down to the floor, pressing a hand to my chest. I had loved him. I had loved her. And they both treated my heart like a disposable thing. But I wasn't disposable. And neither was my child. Part 4, Faces in the Crowd. He packed his things that same night. No dramatics. No apologies that hadn't already been said. He zipped the suitcase quietly while I stayed in the nursery, sitting on the rocking chair we had picked out together just months earlier. I traced my fingers over the fabric, remembering how he'd said, "We'll spend hours here, just the 3 of us." Now it would just be 2. When the front door finally shut behind him, I didn't cry. There were no tears left. I just sat there, rocking in silence. The ticking clock on the wall the only sound in a house that suddenly felt too big. The next few days passed in a haze of diapers, sleepless nights, and pretending to be stronger than I was. Friends texted. Family called. I gave them all the same line, we're taking some space right now. But the truth never stays quiet for long. It started small, an odd look from my neighbor when I brought in the groceries. Then the barista at my regular coffee shop smiled too sympathetically, like she knew something I didn't want her to. Eventually, I got the call from Amanda, a mutual friend who never could keep her voice down. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I heard about Derek and Alyssa, is that true? So it had gotten out. And the thing about betrayal? It doesn't just break your heart, it isolates you. People tiptoe around you, unsure of whether to say something kind or nothing at all. They don't know how to talk to a woman who's been shattered. The hardest part was going to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. I hadn't told them yet, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to see my mother's face when she heard. But of course, they knew. Amanda's voice might have been loud, but gossip was louder. My mom greeted me with a long hug, the kind that says I already know but I'll wait for you to say it. Dad stayed in the kitchen, pretending to be absorbed in cutting roast chicken. I fed the baby in the living room, delaying the inevitable. It wasn't until halfway through the meal that the silence cracked. So, my mother said, I ran into Alyssa's mom at the store. My fork paused midair. She asked how you were doing. She continued carefully. She didn't seem surprised. I placed my fork down and met her eyes. Because Alyssa's not surprised. She was part of it. Dad's hand froze over his plate. You mean she knew? She didn't just know, I said coldly. She was the other woman. My mom gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Alyssa? Our Alyssa? My Alyssa, I corrected. The one who shared my childhood. Who slept over every weekend. Who helped plan my wedding. Who, my voice broke, who held my daughter the day she was born. Dad stood abruptly, walking into the kitchen. The clatter of dishes told me he needed a moment to collect himself. She was like family, Mom whispered. How could she? Because people don't always wear their betrayal on their faces, I said. She smiled through every step of it, and so did he. I didn't stay long after that. The baby was fussy, and my nerves were fraying. I left with my mom begging me to come back next week and my dad standing by the door, jaw tight, offering a nod that said he wanted to kill someone. By the time I got home, the guilt had shifted into something sharper, a need for answers. Not from Derek. Not anymore. From her. I knew she was still working at the design firm downtown. I'd driven by it 100 times. Once just to watch her step out for coffee, her hair bouncing the way it always did, her smile unshaken. It made me sick. The next day, I dressed differently. Not for attention, for armor. A black blazer, fitted jeans, boots with a heel. I looked like a woman who wasn't to be pitied. I walked into the office building like I owned it. The receptionist recognized me instantly. She had seen me at company holiday parties and baby showers. I'm here to see Alyssa, I said flatly. Her eyes widened. She's in a meeting. She'll want to see me, I said. Tell her it's Claire. The wait was only 3 minutes. Then she appeared, flawless, polished, wearing a white silk blouse like she hadn't burned down a life. Claire, she breathed, like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't wait for her to lead. I stepped past her and into the nearest empty conference room. She followed, heels clicking like knives. When the door closed, the room felt heavy with everything unspoken. You owe me, I said. You owe me one honest conversation. Just one. She didn't deny it. Didn't run. She sat. And then she spoke. I loved him, she said softly. I blinked. You what? I didn't plan for it. I didn't want to, but I did. You loved him while he was holding my hand through labor? Her face crumpled slightly. I know what I did was wrong. I know it was cruel, but it didn't start with sex. It started with moments, little ones. He was lonely. I was. Don't you dare. I snapped. Don't you dare play the we were both broken card. You were in my home. I fed you. I let you sleep under our roof because I believed you were family. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry. That's not enough. I know. We sat there, two women who once shared secrets and dresses and dreams, now divided by a betrayal that would never be undone. I didn't come here to forgive you, I said. I came here to say that I'm done being quiet. You may have taken my trust, my marriage, but you will not take my voice." And I left her sitting in that glass room, reflecting on her own face, her own lies, with nothing left to say. Part 5, When the Dust Doesn't Settle. I expected rage when I left that room, something hot and volatile, a rush of adrenaline to carry me through the next chapter. But instead, I felt hollow. Like I'd finally expelled something rotting inside me, and now I was just a shell waiting to be filled again. I didn't tell anyone I'd gone to see Alyssa. Not my parents, not my sister, not even my therapist. It felt like something that had to stay between us, not out of secrecy, but because it was sacred in its own brutal way. She would carry what I said with her, whether she admitted it or not, and I would carry the scar of her answers. The weeks that followed were messier than I anticipated. Derek wanted to talk. At first, it was under the guise of logistics, baby supplies, pickup schedules, apartment lease details, but soon enough, it turned into something more insidious. "I still love you, Claire," he said once, holding the diaper bag with one hand and our daughter's car seat in the other. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe the audacity. "You don't love me," I said. "You love the version of me that let you cheat and still made dinner." He looked hurt, as if he were the one bleeding. "I made a mistake," he murmured. "No," I corrected. "You made hundreds of choices. They just all led to the same result." He tried texting after that. I stopped answering. Let the courts handle the rest. Speaking of courts, the custody hearings were brutal in a way I hadn't anticipated. I had been the one betrayed, the one left standing in the ashes. But somehow I still had to prove I was worthy of primary custody, that I wasn't emotionally volatile or vindictive. My lawyer coached me to remain calm, composed, no matter what was said. Derek's team tried to spin a narrative about how we grew apart, how the stress of parenthood made our relationship fragile. Not once did they use the word infidelity. "Let them paint the picture," my attorney whispered. "We'll bring the facts." But facts didn't erase pain. They didn't dry tears at midnight when I heard my daughter cry and realized I'd have to explain one day why Daddy didn't live with us anymore. On one of the shared custody days, after I passed off our daughter to him and drove home to an empty house, I sat in the driveway for over an hour, staring at the dashboard. The silence was suffocating. That night, I signed up for a support group. At first, I was hesitant. The idea of sitting in a circle, sharing war stories with strangers, felt unbearable. But when the first woman, a redhead named Nina, told her story, I felt something click. Her husband had left her 2 weeks after she gave birth, for his coworker, the same coworker who had planned Nina's baby shower. I almost choked. And then I spoke, slowly, at first, then in torrents. The group didn't judge, they nodded, they understood. It was the first time I'd felt like I didn't have to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. That's also where I met Ethan. He was quiet, sat 2 chairs away, didn't speak for the first 3 sessions. When he finally did, it was short. She said I was too safe, that she needed excitement, so she found it in my best friend. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. But later that night, as we were leaving, we ended up walking toward the same parking lot. He smiled awkwardly and said, "You're brave, the way you talk. Like it hurts, but you still say it." I smiled back. It's the only way I know how to survive. We started getting coffee after meetings. Nothing romantic, just 2 broken people trying to feel less alone. But there was something about the way he listened, really listened, that felt dangerous in the best way. One night, sitting across from him in a dim cafe, I caught myself laughing, genuinely laughing, at something he said. I hadn't done that in months, maybe longer. And then the guilt hit me like a slap. How could I laugh, flirt, even consider healing, when my life was still scattered across courtrooms and therapy sessions? When I was still afraid to open the closet because his old sweatshirt might still be there? I left abruptly, muttering an excuse, tears burning behind my eyes. He didn't chase me, just sent a text that said, "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It just means you stop bleeding when you remember." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know if I was ready for anyone new, but I knew I was tired of being defined by the people who broke me. Back home, I walked into the nursery. My daughter was asleep, her tiny fingers curled into a fist. I brushed a kiss on her forehead and whispered, "I don't know what comes next, baby girl." But we're going to walk into it together. Part 6. The fine line between healing and hurting. The weeks turned into months. The calendar, once filled with appointments and depositions, slowly gave way to playdates and routines. My daughter started babbling, crawling, reaching for me with chubby hands and unwavering trust, and it was her that anchored me. Not the court dates. Not the documents. Not the guilt. Her. But co-parenting with Derek remained its own minefield. At first, he tried being the model father, showing up on time, asking questions about her formula, volunteering to help with her sleep regression. But beneath his polished attempts, I saw something else: performance. He wasn't showing up for her. He was showing up for himself, for optics, for guilt, maybe even for the benefit of whatever version of Alyssa was still lingering in his life. I never asked. I didn't want to know. But I did catch a glimpse of them once. At the grocery store. Alyssa pushing a cart with some organic oat milk nonsense, Derek next to her, pretending to enjoy shopping like he hadn't once whined about picking up toilet paper. She didn't see me, but he did. Our eyes met for a moment, and in that sliver of time, I saw discomfort. Not shame. Not regret. Just discomfort. Like I was a messy reminder of the life they'd bulldozed to be together. I looked away. I didn't cry. Not this time. I'd cried enough. Instead, I picked up the baby yogurt my daughter liked and walked out like I had somewhere better to be. Because I did. Later that evening, Ethan texted. He'd been consistent, supportive but never overbearing. Every Thursday after group, we shared a quiet ritual, coffee and conversation. Sometimes we talked about our exes, sometimes about work, and sometimes about nothing at all. But it was steady, like a warm lamp in a dim room. That night he wrote, "Want to go somewhere that isn't lit by fluorescent bulbs and smells like burnt espresso?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because part of me still felt like I was stepping on sacred ground. Like if I smiled too much, it meant I'd forgotten. Like if I wanted to move forward, I had to get permission from the version of me that lay broken in the hospital bed. But healing doesn't wait for permission. It demands motion. So I said yes. He picked a quiet Italian place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but warm, with soft lighting, real candles, and the kind of music that makes you feel like the world isn't all chaos. I wore a simple dress. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind myself I was still a woman, not just a mother or a divorcee or a victim. Ethan stood when I approached the table. "You look beautiful," he said, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Dinner was easy. Not in a forget the pain kind of way, but in a remember you're more than the pain kind of way. He told me about his daughter. She was 8, into robotics, and had already declared herself a future engineer. I told him about mine, how she clapped when the dog barked and tried to eat her own socks. We laughed. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like release. But of course, nothing stays untouched for long. Halfway through dessert, my phone buzzed. Derek. I stared at it. Ethan didn't press. Finally, I answered. "What's wrong?" Derek's voice was tight. "She has a fever." I tried to give her Tylenol, but she threw up. "She won't sleep." I was already grabbing my coat. Ethan stood too. "Go," he said softly. "Let me know she's okay." I nodded, a silent promise between us. When I arrived, the house felt foreign. The air too sterile. Alyssa was nowhere in sight. Derek handed me our daughter, panic behind his eyes. "She won't stop crying." I held her close, rocked her gently, and hummed a lullaby. Within minutes, her breathing slowed. Feverish, yes. Sick, definitely. But not unsafe. "You still know how to calm her," Derek said quietly. I didn't look at him. Because I see her. She's not a prop. She's not leverage. She's my daughter. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "She's staying with me tonight. If you want to talk about anything else, contact my lawyer." I left without looking back. That night, I sat beside her crib, watching her sleep. The fever was dropping. Her cheeks were flushed, but peaceful. My phone lit up. "Ethan, everything okay?" I texted back, "Yes." "She's better now." Then after a pause, I added, "Thank you for tonight. For reminding me I'm allowed to live again." Part 7, The Mirror and the Mask. The next few days blurred together. Fevers faded. Routines resumed. But something inside me had shifted. That night at the restaurant with Ethan cracked a part of me open I didn't know was still closed. It wasn't just about dating or being seen, it was about being me again. The woman I buried beneath years of compromise and quiet heartbreak. But healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It doubles back. It whispers doubts in the dark. Especially when Derek asked for another meeting. I hesitated. Everything in me wanted to say no. But my lawyer advised otherwise. "It's best if custody transitions remain civil," she said. "Judges notice effort." So I agreed. We met at a neutral space, a cafe near the courthouse with stiff chairs and overpriced coffee. He arrived 5 minutes late, looking tired. Not broken, not guilty, just tired. "I want to adjust the schedule," he said, skipping hello entirely. "I'm traveling more for work, and Alyssa's been taking on extra hours at her job." Her name hit the air like spoiled milk. I kept my voice steady. "And what does that have to do with our daughter?" He sighed, frustrated. "I just think it'd be better if I had her every other weekend for now, instead of the current arrangement. Less bouncing back and forth, more consistency." "Consistency?" I scoffed. "You mean less responsibility?" He rubbed his temple. "Claire, I'm trying here. You think this is easy for me?" I stared at him. "No, Derek. I think you're still trying to avoid consequences." He flinched. Not visibly, but I knew him too well. I could read every subtle twitch of guilt, every line in his face. I stood. "Submit your proposal through the lawyer." "Claire." But I was already walking away. On my way out, I passed a woman and her teenage daughter at a nearby table. The mother was laughing. The kind of laughter that takes years to earn, deep, unafraid, weathered. The daughter rolled her eyes, but she was smiling too. It hit me in the gut. That was what I wanted with my daughter someday. Laughter, lightness, a relationship not built on secrets or careful steps around emotional landmines, but on truth. I texted Ethan that night. Want to meet for coffee tomorrow? No pressure, just talking helps." Ethan, always. We met at the park this time. It was a crisp morning. Leaves turning and wind brushing through the trees like whispers of change. He brought 2 coffees, just how I liked mine, cream, no sugar, extra hot. "How's she doing?" he asked. "Better, eating more, starting to point at things and babble." He smiled. "Smart girl." I took a deep breath. I saw Derek again. "He's trying to modify the custody agreement. Said Alyssa's too busy now." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds familiar." I laughed, but it wasn't amused. "I know. Sometimes I still ask myself how I didn't see it. How long they were slipping around behind my back. How much of what I thought was love was just convenience." Ethan's eyes were kind. "Because you trusted. Because you believed in what you built. That's not weakness, Claire. That's what makes you human." We sat in silence for a bit, watching kids chase pigeons and dogs bark at nothing. He broke the quiet. "You know, I was thinking, there's this art exhibit coming to the city. Abstract stuff. Messy, complicated, kind of like life. Would you want to go?" I looked at him, really looked. The gentle steadiness, the way he never pushed. And I realized something. It wasn't about replacing Derek. It wasn't about proving I could be happy again. It was about being with someone who saw the real me, flaws, cracks, all of it, and still wanted to be near. "I'd like that," I said. When I got home, my daughter reached for me from her crib. I picked her up, held her close, and whispered into her hair, "We're going to be okay, baby girl." And for the first time since everything shattered, I actually believed it. Part 8, The Final Cut. The day of the final hearing arrived like a storm you know is coming but still hope might pass. I stood outside the courthouse with my lawyer, hands trembling despite the layers of wool around me. I wasn't afraid of losing custody, not really. My case was solid. I was stable, loving, consistent. What scared me was closure. Because closure meant finality, and finality meant no more wondering. No more what ifs. No more Derek, not even in theory. Inside, the courtroom was sterile and quiet. Derek sat across from me, suit crisp, eyes tired. Alyssa wasn't there. Maybe that was a choice, maybe an omen. The judge reviewed the documents, asked a few questions, and then, just like that, it was over. I was granted full physical custody. Derek would get alternate weekends, holidays on a rotating schedule, and mandatory parenting classes. He barely looked at me as we left. Outside, I took a deep breath. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt heavy. Ethan was waiting in the parking lot. He didn't say anything, just opened his arms, and I walked into them. No questions. No demands. Just quiet, unconditional presence. "You did it," he murmured. "No," I said. "We did it. Me and my daughter." She gave me the reason to stand when all I wanted to do was collapse. He kissed the top of my head. That evening, after I put her to bed, I found myself going through an old photo box. Back when Derek and I were young, foolish, and invincible. There we were, grinning on a beach in Mexico, drunk on cheap margaritas and the illusion that love was enough. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I tore it in half. I didn't burn it. I didn't scream. I simply let it go. Because grief doesn't always come in firestorms. Sometimes it ends in silence, in acceptance. Later that week, Ethan and I went to the art exhibit he mentioned. The gallery was full of chaotic pieces, sharp angles, blurred colors, strange shapes that didn't quite make sense up close. But from a distance, you could see the beauty in it all. The way pain curved into something meaningful. The way brokenness became pattern. "This one's my favorite," he said, standing in front of a canvas that looked like it had been punched and smeared with every color imaginable. "Why?" He looked at me. "Because it's raw. Unfiltered. Nothing held back." I reached for his hand. "Like life?" He smiled. "Exactly. I don't know what the future holds for Ethan and me. We're not rushing. There's healing to do, for both of us. But I do know this, I no longer define myself by the man who betrayed me, or the friend who stole from me under the same roof. I am more than what they broke. I am a mother. A survivor. A woman who clawed her way out of the ruins and chose herself. And maybe, just maybe, that's what love really is. Not the picture-perfect wedding or the Instagram-worthy vacations. But the choice to keep loving yourself, your child, the people who show up when it's ugly, even after the storm. Because some stories aren't fairy tales. Some are forged in fire and rise in truth.